The Democratic Party emerged in the 1820s. It formed from the remnants of Thomas Jefferson's Democratic Republican Party. Andrew Jackson, a staunch advocate for white supremacy, is considered the party's spiritual father. From its inception, the Democratic Party grappled with the issue of slavery. Southern Democrats were fiercely pro-slavery. They saw it as essential to their way of life and economic prosperity. This stance would have a profound and lasting impact on the party's relationship with Black Americans. In the decades leading up to the Civil War, the Democratic Party became increasingly beholden to its Southern wing. The party's support for slavery was codified in its platform. Democrats opposed any attempts to limit the expansion of slavery into new territories. This stance placed them in direct opposition to the growing abolitionist movement. It also set the stage for the tumultuous years leading up to the Civil War. The Civil War and the subsequent Reconstruction era brought about significant changes in the political landscape. The Republican Party, founded on principles of anti-slavery, rose to prominence. The Democrats, however, found themselves associated with the Confederacy and the institution of slavery. This association would haunt the party for generations. It also created deep divisions within its ranks. Despite the formal end of slavery, the Democratic Party's legacy in the South remained tied to white supremacy. Southern Democrats played a key role in enacting Jim Crow laws. These laws aimed to disenfranchise Black Americans and maintain racial segregation. The party's complicity in these systems of oppression would have lasting consequences for Black communities. It also sowed the seeds of mistrust and resentment that would take decades to address. The post-Reconstruction era saw the rise of Jim Crow laws in the South. These laws systematically disenfranchised Black citizens. They included poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses. These measures effectively barred Black Americans from exercising their right to vote. The Democratic Party, firmly in control of Southern politics, played a central role in implementing and upholding these discriminatory practices. The disenfranchisement of Black voters had a devastating impact on Black communities. It silenced their voices and diminished their political power. It also perpetuated a cycle of poverty and inequality. The Democratic Party's role in this system of oppression is a stain on its history. It is a legacy that continues to resonate today. The civil rights movement of the mid-20th century challenged the Democratic Party to confront its racist past. Activists, many of whom were Black Democrats, demanded an end to segregation and voting rights for all. The party found itself deeply divided. Southern Democrats, clinging to white supremacy, resisted these calls for change. Northern Democrats, facing pressure from their own constituents, were more receptive to the demands of the civil rights movement. This internal conflict came to a head at the 1964 Democratic National Convention. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, an organization representing Black voters in Mississippi, challenged the legitimacy of the all-white Mississippi delegation. Fannie Lou Hamer, a prominent MFDP leader, testified before the Credentials Committee about the violence and intimidation Black Mississippians faced when trying to register to vote. Her powerful testimony shocked the nation and put the Democratic Party's commitment to racial equality in the spotlight. The events of the 1964 Democratic National Convention marked a turning point in the party's relationship with Black voters. While the MFDP did not succeed in unseating the all-white delegation, their activism forced the party to acknowledge the issue of Black disenfranchisement. The passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, championed by President Lyndon B. Johnson, a Democrat, was a major victory for the civil rights movement. It outlawed discriminatory voting practices and led to a dramatic increase in Black voter registration across the South. Despite these advances, the Democratic Party's relationship with Black voters remained complex. The party's Southern wing continued to shrink as white Southerners, alienated by the party's embrace of civil rights, shifted their allegiance to the Republican Party. This realignment had a profound impact on American politics. It also solidified the Democratic Party's reliance on Black voters as a key constituency. In the decades that followed, the Democratic Party's outreach to Black voters increasingly relied on emotional appeals and a focus on historical injustices. While these appeals resonated with many black voters, they also drew criticism for their lack of substantive policy discussions. Critics argued that the party was taking black voters for granted, relying on fear and guilt to secure their votes rather than engaging with the issues that directly impacted their lives. This shift in outreach strategy coincided with a growing generational divide within the black community. Older black voters who had lived through the civil rights movement and witnessed firsthand the party's role in dismantling Jim Crow remained largely loyal to the Democratic Party. Younger black voters, however, expressed a growing sense of disconnect from the party. They were more likely to identify as independent or even Republican. This generational divide reflected a broader trend of disillusionment with the political system among young Americans. It also highlighted the need for the Democratic Party to reassess its approach to engaging with black voters. The Democratic Party's legacy with black Americans is a complex one, marked by both progress and persistent challenges. From its early pro-slavery stance to its role in enacting Jim Crow laws, the party's history is intertwined with the struggle for racial equality in America. While the civil rights movement forced the party to confront its past and led to significant advancements in voting rights, the relationship between black voters and the Democratic Party remains fraught with tension. The reliance on emotional appeals and historical guilt, while effective in mobilizing some segments of the black electorate, has also alienated others, particularly younger generations who are seeking concrete solutions to contemporary issues. The generational divide within the black community underscores the need for the Democratic Party to engage in a more nuanced and respectful dialogue with black voters. This dialogue must move beyond simplistic narratives of victimhood and fear and instead focus on developing policy solutions that address the systemic inequalities that continue to plague black communities. The call for a more policy-focused engagement is not a rejection of the Democratic Party's historical legacy. Rather, it is a recognition that the struggle for racial justice is ongoing and that the solutions of the past may not be sufficient to address the challenges of the present. The Democratic Party, if it wishes to maintain the support of black voters, must demonstrate a genuine commitment to addressing issues such as economic inequality, police brutality, and mass incarceration. This will require more than just rhetoric and symbolic gestures. It will require a fundamental shift in priorities and a willingness to invest in the communities that have been historically marginalized and underserved.